If you're a photographer, videographer, vlogger, or someone who's just looking to capture their adventures, in this video, I'm sharing tips on how to better capture your travels. And yes, I've got the new OM-3 from OM system here, and in this video, we're gonna see how it performs. Let's get to it. Inspired by their legacy film cameras like the OM-1, the new OM-3 digital mirrorless camera sports a familiar body, and I mean, just looking at this thing, it is absolutely beautiful and I already want to take it everywhere. The OM-3 has a 20 megapixel sensor that's capable of up to 120 frames per second for photo, and on the video side, it can capture 4K 60 frames per second. So just on the spec side alone, this is a very capable camera. And last week, I actually took it down to the beaches of Florida where I captured some photos down there, and I really appreciated how compact this camera was and how lightweight it was. It was around 80 degrees, and the last thing I wanted to do was carry around a bulky camera. So having this and its compactness really made all the difference, and I walked away with some good shots. But now we're all the way in upstate New York and it is absolutely freezing. All right, we just got to this incredible gateway arch here, and this looks fantastic. Adding a subject to your photos is always going to elevate it a little bit more because it makes your photos a little bit more personable and a little bit more relatable. So I took some photos of this archway just to get an establishing shot, and now I'm gonna ask my friend Sydney here to step into frame, and then we're gonna see what we can get. So just right off the bat, you can tell a major difference from the before and the after. When you add a subject into your travel photos, that's going to take it to the next level. In addition to that, I'm also using low angles here. It's really easy for me to find a landscape or find any kind of portrait shot and just go here. You know, I have my camera here. That's just the easiest default angle to take. For this particular composition, I'm exploring getting some low angles by going nice and low to the floor, and it's actually making it look a little bit more dramatic. It makes your subject look like the hero shot that you're after, and overall just takes your travel photos to the next level. If I have a person in my frame, I oftentimes like to default to using the most shallow depth of field for most of my photography, especially when it comes to portraiture. But for shooting street photography and environmental portraits, because I want to incorporate more of the background, I might opt for a smaller aperture and actually try and raise that to around f4 or even to f8 to get the entire scene in tack sharp focus, and also have the context behind the subject that's so important to the whole entire story. For shooting portraits out in the field, especially when you're out in nature, I like to aim for an aperture that is much larger, which means for a lens like this, I've got the 25mm and the 17mm that I've been using from OM system. And I love them because they are 1.8 aperture, and that just means that I can get that beautiful bokeh and that blurry background behind my subject when I'm shooting out in the field if I'm at that 1.8. We're dealing with moving subjects for the most part here, and I don't want to have any motion blur, so I'll aim for a shutter speed of around 1/150th of a second or even higher. Because the stabilization is so great on the OM-3, I'm able to handhold at even slower shutter speeds with no problem. And then for my ISO, I don't mind cranking it up to 3200 if need be, because again, it handles those ISO ranges so well. And if I have to crank my shutter speed, I don't mind pushing that ISO to compensate. Something to look for your street photography is definitely those textures, patterns, and those funky colors that really can tell the story of the location that you're traveling to. For example, we're traveling around where one of the original Woodstocks actually occurred, and because of that, there's a whole bunch of different colorful buildings surrounding this place, and we want to make sure that we capture that. All right, we are officially in downtown Saugerties right now, and this is the original Woodstock location. Not the original, it's from 1994, so when they came back for Woodstock, this is where it happened. Such an eclectic town. It's really awesome to be exploring the street here for some street photography, and we got this really old movie theater in front of us that looks awesome on camera right now, so let's take some photos. George Strait's the king of country music right here. The king of country music. Oceanfront property in Arizona, brilliant. Come on now. So when you're on your travels, if you're going to a destination that has various landscapes and especially waterfalls, here are a few settings recommendations that you should keep in mind. For landscape photography, in general, I aim for around f5.6 to around f8 or even f11 if I'm trying to get the entire scene in focus. And basically that's generally the sharpest point of your lens. So that means if you're shooting at that aperture, not only are you getting the entire scene in tack sharp focus, but you're also making sure that that final image is also tack sharp. For my ISO, I always try and aim for the lowest ISO that I can get away with. This always depends on the scenario that I'm shooting in. For most modern cameras, and certainly the OM-3 as well, I find that I can shoot at higher ISOs without any problem because they handle any kind of noise so well. And then shutter speed is going to vary depending on the situation. If you've got a lot of movement in your scene, aim for a higher shutter speed, at least double your focal length. And if you're trying to shoot a long exposure of clouds, aiming for a half a second or even longer will give you the best results. Well, we just hiked down a somewhat treacherous hike, but we were well prepared and we made it down to the beautiful Caterskills Falls. This is one of my favorite waterfalls in New York, and I thought it would be awesome to capture some landscapes in the area. So for this scene, I wanted to kind of do a long exposure here, but there's a slight lack of water coming down, or I should say most of the water is frozen. So I'm basically treating this as I would for any other landscape, shooting it at a slightly higher aperture, raising my ISO when necessary. I'm not too worried about any kind of noise being introduced into this image because the OM-3 handles it so well. And we got some beautiful color coming in from the sunset on the right. Let's see what we can get here. I also love using high-res shot mode for my landscape photography because it stacks a bunch of photos from this one camera. It'll actually move the sensor around in a way that stacks all the photos, combines all those megapixels, and you get an incredibly high megapixel result, which means I could print it on a wall or something. We woke up nice and early for sunrise this morning, and it's always a little tentative to wake up for sunrise for those landscape photos, but it can make all the difference because this is one of the best times of day to actually shoot any kind of landscapes. And just in general, the light is so much better around this time. So I'm gonna take some photos using the high-res mode on the OM-3, which gives me a 50 megapixel file. If I put that on a tripod as well, that'll bring it up to 80 megapixels. Pro tip, use a 2-second delay on your camera. That way you can avoid any unwanted camera shake. Also with the OM-3, I could pair that with the OM System app and actually control the camera remotely, meaning that I could just hit the shutter button and I don't have to worry about a delay, and that'll avoid any unwanted camera shake in my final photo. Also impressive has to be the video features on the OM-3. It can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second, and it has a dedicated S&Q function so that I can shoot that slow motion or even do a time lapse through that feature as well. I've been using it and switching to that S&Q so that I can record the snow falling down, which we've been so lucky to have while here in upstate New York. There are so many different ways to spice up your travel photos and videos and take things to the next level. Hope you guys got something out of this video, maybe pulled 1 or 2 tips. Let me know down in the comments where you plan to take travel photos and videos. Where's your favorite spot? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.